There are two things that I wish Apple would have done differently with the M1 MacBook Air, and then there's one thing that I regret doing when I bought mine. You see, when the MacBook Air was released, I was skeptical because I had a bad experience with an older MacBook Air. So a few years ago, we were developing a web-based application and we needed to test it on macOS. So I ran to the Apple Store, I bought a MacBook Air, and from day one, that laptop was massively underpowered. So when Apple released the M1 MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro with a fairly similar price point, I was ready to be underwhelmed. And now, more than 1 year later, and with 2 new MacBooks released, I want to share my M1 MacBook Air experience with you, tell you who I think it's a good fit for, and then also what configuration I would recommend. One obvious consideration when shopping for a laptop is portability. It doesn't matter if you're going to use it for work, if you're a student who has to carry their laptop with them everywhere they go, or even if you're just going to be using it around the house. Portability matters. For the past year, I've used this laptop around the home, when I'm out and about, and then when I've traveled, and the size has been great. I love how light and slim the body is, and then at the same time, there's no flex to the keyboard plate, so it feels solid. Some laptops that I've used have this flimsy feel to them, and I always think that I'm gonna break something. So with this laptop, I feel like I have the best of both worlds. It's really thin, it's light and portable, and then at the same time, I don't have to be super careful about how I handle it or if I just throw it in a backpack. I also feel like the size of the display has worked really well for me. It's 13.3 inches, which is the same as the M1 MacBook Pro. And we now also have the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the larger and better displays, which certainly have their advantages. But if I put aside my creator workflow and look at this as more of an average user, I think the display size is right in that sweet spot. It's a Retina display with a resolution of 2560 by 1600 and 400 nits of maximum brightness. So it's not the brightest display that Apple makes. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit brighter, then you'll need to check out the 13, 14, and 16-inch MacBook Pros, which have a slightly brighter display. And I'm saying slightly brighter because they all have a maximum brightness of 500 nits for SDR content. For most of what I do, I haven't really noticed a major difference in brightness. It's there, but it's not like you can't see the MacBook Air and then the other three are like incredibly bright. So the difference is nuanced. Now, if you're watching HDR content, then the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro can go all the way up to 1000 nits of sustained brightness, then 1600 nits peak brightness. So you're getting better dynamic range and a higher contrast ratio. These displays are also Liquid Retina XDR displays, so they're powered by mini LEDs, and they have a 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate, which Apple calls ProMotion. You may already know this, but that means that the displays can slow down their refresh rate down to 24 Hz when you're viewing content or anytime there is a static image on the screen, and therefore it could save battery life. Then if you're navigating around macOS, if you're opening and closing apps, if you're scrolling, gaming, or watching content, and they can bump that refresh rate all the way up to 120 Hz for a more fluid and responsive user experience. And here's why I'm telling you about these newer displays. Are they nicer? Yes, they are bigger, they provide more real estate to work with, and if I had them side by side, I prefer the 14 and the 16-inch over the MacBook Air. But I've never once looked at this display and thought, oh my God, it's like just not good enough. And unless I'm gaming, 120 Hz is like a nice to have more than a need. Now, if you're looking for a larger display, then that's a different conversation altogether, and you should take a look at these newer models. But keep in mind that even the base model of the 14-inch starts at more than twice what you can get the MacBook Air for. Now, regardless of which MacBook you get, whenever you're dealing with home electronics, one of the things you may want to consider is extended coverage. And that brings me to today's sponsor, Yahoo Plus Protect Home, which offers device protection programs that provide technical support and extended warranties for any number of home devices. What's cool is that you're able to cover eligible devices regardless of when you bought them. And the plan covers an unlimited quantity of qualified desktops, laptops, tablets, gaming systems, smartwatches, and too many other types of devices for me to even be able to include, but you can find a complete list by clicking the link in the description. So for one low monthly price, you can protect your home devices and get expert tech support for almost any issue. What might be the best part is that you don't have to keep track of multiple warranty plans, and everything is under one simple solution. So click the link in the description to see a complete list of eligible devices and get started. And thank you to Yahoo Plus Protect Home for sponsoring this video and helping me me create more content for you. Now, one of the concerns that I had when I first got the M1 MacBook Air is the ports, and I had a few thoughts here. So first, there are only 2 ports. Second, there are only Thunderbolt ports, so no USB-A. And then third, both of the ports are on the left side. Now, when I evaluate a piece of tech, I do my best to keep in mind who it's designed for. And at the end of the day, it's not important to me what you go out and buy. I just hope that I can provide you with enough information and perspective so you can buy what will work best for your needs and budget. The reality is that the majority of the target audience for this laptop isn't likely to need more than 2 ports. Like, most people don't attach any accessories at all and are simply going to use one of these ports for charging. A small percentage of people will add an accessory every once in a while, and in that context, I think that 2 ports are enough. So my main issue, if you want to call it that, is that they're both on the same side, and it means that I can only charge it or attach accessories from the left, which isn't always convenient. I think it would have been better if they put one on each side, and that way they're not really adding functionality, but they are improving the user experience. And while I'm okay with 2 ports on the MacBook Air, I wasn't okay with 2 of them on the MacBook Pro because that device is being marketed as a pro device. Now, personally, I do need more than 2 ports, especially if I'm going to use one of them for charging. So I appreciate the additional options we get on the 14 and 16 MacBook Pro models with 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, an SD card reader, and an HDMI port. So again, the 2 ports will work great for the overwhelming majority of users, and those who have a more demanding workflow can either use a hub or upgrade to a larger MacBook Pro. If I had a second wish for a MacBook Air upgrade, it would be to have MagSafe. I like the fast charging, and I like the protection that it offers in case one of my dogs goes flying through the house and pulls the cord. Now, 2 things that definitely don't need an upgrade are the keyboard and the trackpad. Now, I've typed a ton on this keyboard. I used it at my desk, on my lap, on an airplane, sitting in bed, and it's probably the best keyboard that I've used on any laptop. I actually really like that the MacBook Air is slightly thinner in the front than it is in the back because there's a slight lean forward, and the keys are nice and big, they have a good amount of spacing, and the switches themselves have nice feedback for a laptop keyboard. Now, a lot of times when you're working on a laptop, the keyboard is sort of a concession you have to make in order to gain portability. But if you're someone who, like me, does a ton of typing, you're going to really appreciate how comfortable this keyboard is to type on. After a year of typing, I wouldn't change anything about it. And while I like the larger function keys and the larger Touch ID on the 14 and 16-inch models, those 2 things are definitely not reason enough to upgrade. Now, the trackpad has also been great, and while the MacBook Pro has a larger one, the one on the MacBook Air is plenty big, and it's pretty much as good as it gets. Now, another super important consideration for me is battery life, because I'm using this laptop a lot when I'm not in the office, and I don't like to worry about battery life. I mean, who likes using any type of electronic device and then having to continue to look up at that battery percentage? The MacBook Air is rated for 18 hours, and I easily finish a full day without having to charge it. Now, of course, that depends on what you're doing. You can't edit and render videos for 18 hours, but for a typical day of work, web surfing, and content consumption, I never really think about having to charge it. It's not as good as the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which is like the king of all laptops that I have in the studio as far as battery life, but it is still really good. And this is also super important to me when I travel and I'm not sure when I'll have access to a power source. Now, I think we can all agree that laptop cameras in general are not good, and that's probably a function of them not really having to be. I mean, everyone's walking around with much better cameras than their cell phones, and the ones on our laptops are pretty much only being used for Zoom meetings. So is the 720p camera on the MacBook Air great? No, it's not great, but for a 720p camera, it's actually pretty good. And while I definitely think that the 1080p cameras on the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro models is better, it's got higher resolution and better low light performance, it doesn't actually change anything for the way that I use it. And lighting is by far the most important factor in determining image quality. Moving on, if you use the speakers on your laptop, these actually sound quite good, so you can definitely watch movies and enjoy the audio. They aren't as good as the 14 or 16-inch, which are the best that I've heard so far on any laptop, but here's why it hasn't really been an issue for me. So I pretty much always use headphones with my laptop because there are usually other people around. And if I'm in the office or in a downstairs studio, then I either use my main workstation or I connect to dedicated speakers. Now let's talk about the configuration options. I'll tell you about the mistake that I made, and then I'll give you my recommendations. I know that this is a confusing purchase for a lot of you, and I do my best to read my comments. So if you still have questions once you're finished with this video, just drop them in the comment section and I'll try to help. The M1 MacBook Air has two base configurations and both come with the M1 chip, so you're getting the same 8-core CPU and 8 GB of unified memory, but the first option comes with a 7-core GPU and 256 gigs of internal storage for $999, and the second comes with an 8-core GPU and 512 gigs of internal storage for $1249. So you're getting an extra 256 gigs of internal storage and the additional GPU core for $250. Now I'm using the prices from the Apple website, but you can usually get better pricing by using the links in the description. So the average MacBook Air user is never going to notice the difference between a 7 and an 8-core GPU. So that should not be a reason for you to upgrade. And depending on what you plan on doing, you may or may not need to upgrade the internal storage. If you're just using this to surf the web, email, social media, and then watch content, you can get by with 256 gigs. But if you're going to be installing some larger apps and you're already going to upgrade to 512 gigs of internal storage or even more, then you might as well pay the extra $50 for the additional GPU core. Now the mistake that I made was only getting 8 gigs of unified memory. And the reason I did that goes all the way back to the beginning, where I was just expecting to be underwhelmed by this MacBook. But in reality, it's got a super powerful and efficient M1 chip, a light and portable form factor, a great keyboard and trackpad, a nice display, and excellent battery life. So for how I use this laptop, it should easily last me for the next 5 years, maybe more. And the only thing that I can see being a real issue is that I may want more RAM. So if I had to do it over again, I would have gotten 16 gigabytes. Now, personally, for this laptop, I don't need a lot of internal storage. I don't do things like back up my photos and video files because I use iCloud. And even if I did store those things locally, I would just get an external SSD, which would have a much higher capacity for a fraction of the cost. You'll also be able to access it from other devices. Keep in mind that you can't upgrade the unified memory or the internal storage, so make sure that you get what you think you'll need for the life of this device. In a situation like mine, there's nothing I can do other than get a new device. The unified memory is built right into the chip and there's no way for me to add any. Now, unless you're looking for a Windows machine, I think that the M1 MacBook Air is still undefeated and it's the best value for most users who are looking for a MacBook. Sure, there are more powerful options in the new 14 and 16-inch models of the MacBook Pro, but if you don't need that additional processing power or the larger display, I think the other advantages are tempting, but don't add enough value to justify the significantly higher price. So this is the first time that I feel comfortable recommending an entry-level MacBook, and now that you watched my 1-year review, you should check out how the 14-inch MacBook Pro compares to the 16-inch. Click on my face to subscribe. Hopefully this video was helpful. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.